Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the National Hispanic Council on Aging's webinar, Protecting Older Adults from Abuse and Neglect. My name is Christine Perez, NHCOA's Director of Programs, and it's my pleasure to be moderating today's webinar. This educational webinar focuses on recognizing and preventing elder abuse and neglect. Today, participants will learn about the different forms of abuse that older adults are vulnerable to, including physical, emotional and financial abuse, as well as neglect. The webinar will also highlight available resources and practical ways that families, caregivers, professionals, and community members can use to help create safer environments for older adults. This webinar is in partnership with the Administration for Community Living, also known as ACL. To begin today's session, let's take a closer look at an important issue affecting older adults: abuse and neglect. It is important to understand that abuse and neglect can take many forms and may not always be easy to recognize. Our first speaker, Pedro Lima, will provide more guidance on this important issue. Pedro is NHCOA's Finance and Project Development Manager and will be highlighting common signs of neglect and abuse more prevalent among older adults. Welcome, Pedro.
Thank you, Christine. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my camera is on as well, right? Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So, as Christine said, my name is Pedro Lima, and I serve as Finance and Programs Development Manager at NHCOA, or National Hispanic Council on Aging. So, part of my responsibilities is to oversee Casa Iris, is an affordable housing community in Washington, D.C., that serves older adults, many of whom are Latino and have very limited incomes. Casa Iris falls under my area of responsibility, so my role includes not only program and financial oversight, but also understanding the everyday needs, challenges, and concerns of the older adults who call this community home. Approaching the theme of common signs of neglect and abuse more prevalent among older adults, I want to share organizational perspective based on NHCOA's work with the older adults, their families, caregivers, and communities. Our experience at Casares is more important. It's an important part of that perspective, but it's not the only one. Through our programs and trainings, outreach, community partnerships, we interact with older adults and the people who support them in many different settings. So next slide, please. Um, why this matter? According to the CDC, abuse, including neglect and exploitation, is experienced by about 1 in 10 older adults who live at home. Many situations never came to anyone's attention because an older adult might be afraid, ashamed, socially isolated, dependent on the person causing the harm, or unable to clearly explain what is happening. Abuse is not always one dramatic event. Sometimes it's a pattern of small changes involving a control, intimidation, deprivation, isolation, or misuse of trust. One sign, which is very warning, um, sorry, one warning sign alone doesn't automatically prove that abuse is occurring. What should be a concern is a significant change, several warning signs appearing together, or a pattern that becomes more serious over time. Next slide. I want to just make something very clear before we continue in discussing the warning signs. So that we at NHCOA, we have enormous respect for family caregivers, professional caregivers, neighbors, friends, and everyone who forms part of an older adult's support network. Most caregivers work in good faith and provide essential support. Family caregivers in particular provide countless hours of unpaid care. They help with many areas with food, transportation, medical appointments, medications, finances, personal care, and emotional support. often without adequate training, finance assistance, or time to rest. So that's why we support caregivers. And as an example of that, we provide our caregiver training. So we want caregivers to have information, tools, and resources that help them provide care while also protecting their own health and well-being. The examples we'll be discussing today do not represent most of the caregivers or most of family members. They represent a smaller number of situations in which another adult might experience neglect, exploitation, or abuse. So recognizing these warning signs should not lead us to treat every caregiver with suspicion. It should help us to identify the situation in which another adult or even an overwhelmed caregiver might need additional support and intervention. Uh, Next slide, please. Um, I would like to share a personal story, but rather than sharing one identifiable person's story, I want to describe a combination of situations and warning signs that have encountered through we have seen throughout our work. These examples are intended to make the signs recognizable while protecting the identity and privacy of every older adult involved. We have observed that older adults with very limited social support might be more vulnerable. This can include older adults who have fewer family members nearby, or have lost contact with relatives, or do not have anyone consistently checking on them. That risk can increase after a significant change in a person's life, such as developing mobility limitations, experiencing cognitive or mental health changes, or living with a chronic medical condition that makes them more dependent on others. These conditions do not cause abuse. However, that can reduce the older adult's options and create greater imbalance of power between the older adult and the person providing assistance. Imagine an older adult who has always managed their own money, paid rent, purchased necessities, and made decisions independently. As this person's health changes, a friend or a relative or a professional caregiver begins providing more assistance. At first, the person might help with transportation, groceries, medication, or just paying the bills. But over time, that helper becomes more the only person's support or trust, the only person available, I would say. The helper begins answering every question for the older adult, controlling the mail, managing the bank account, or and deciding who might speak privately with this older adult. The older adult then stops participating in activities, become more nervous or withdraw, or suddenly has difficult time paying for medications or food or rent or any other necessities. So no single one of these details, again, prove abuse alone. The person might be providing legitimate and necessary support. However, when one individual has control over other adults' money, communication, transportation, medication, and access to other people with very little transparency or independent oversight, the risk becomes greater. The concern is not simply that the person is a paid caregiver or is a person that is not a family member. Many professional caregivers are highly responsible and trustworthy. And unfortunately, family members can also financially support another adult. The concern is the concentration of control in one person's hands without accountability. Um, I want to talk, let me see my slide, if I mention everything. Yeah, so next slide, please. I will talk a little bit about understanding the difference between assistance and exploitation. This can be a very difficult area because there's sometimes a thin line between assisting another adult with financial decisions and taking control and exploiting them. So let me mention again, helping another adult manage the money does not automatically create the exploitation. There might be a legitimate reason for a family member or a caregiver or a representative payee or a person with a power of attorney to pay bills and make certain financial decisions. When money is limited, that person might also have to prioritize the rent, utilities, food, medication, or medical care. The older adult might not agree with those decisions. And a disagreement of how the money is being spent doesn't, again, by itself, establish that abuse. At the same time, cognitive decline or physical dependency does not give anyone unlimited authority over the older adult's money. The older adult should remain involved in decisions to the greatest extent possible. Anyone assisting with finances should act transparently, remain within the authority they have been given, and use their money for the older adult's needs and benefit, not for their own. If another adult says, someone is taking my money, we should not assume that they have been abused but at first. We need to, but we also don't dismiss that what the adult is saying uh, and say, oh, they're confused or they are not making good decisions anymore. The appropriate response is to look carefully. What has changed? We need to ask ourselves. Who has authority or how the money is being used? Whether bills are being paid, whether the other adult is being included and respected. In our work, one of the signs we might observe is another adult who has never been late on rent or other payments and then suddenly begins falling behind. This might be someone who have never had such a much, a lot of money, but who could still purchase the personal items and meet basic obligations. Suddenly, this person has no money at all. We need to ask what has changed. Did the person income change? What was there an unexpected medical expense? Did the person become confused about any bills? Or did someone else gain access to the bank account and begin using the money? A late payment would not prove that financial exploitation is happening. But we need to see the change, um, especially if someone else has taken control of their accounts. Is that that's a warning sign that we deserve attention. So when appropriate, and when the other adults give permission, a trusted family member or a friend might help review bank statements, look for unusual withdrawals of purchases, or confirm that rent and utilities and medications, which is the basic and more essential expenses, has been paid. The goal is not to take control away from the old adult, but it's to create transparency and reduce possibilities of one or someone else misuse the position without anyone noticing. Next slide, please. We also have other common forms of and warning signs. And I will be talking here on this slide about emotional or physiological, the physical and sexual abuse, forms of abuse. Um, Emotional abuse can include threats, humiliation, insults, intimidation, harassment, or isolation of the other adult. The signs might be subtle. The other adult might become anxious, depressed, unusually quiet, nervous around a particular person, or withdraw from family and community activities. We should also pay attention when a relative or a friend or a caregiver begins visiting frequently and the other adult's behavior changes after that person becomes more involved. Another warning sign is when someone constantly interrupts, speaks for the other adult, or controls the telephone, prevents visitors, or refuses to allow private conversations. Again, it doesn't prove the emotional abuse. The science itself doesn't prove that emotional abuse, but if someone that was previously independent and socially engaged becomes isolated, fearful, or unable to speak for themselves, we should definitely check in. So I will break down a little more about what physical abuse look like. It can be intentionally hitting, pushing, restraining, or otherwise causing of any physical harm. The warning signs include unexplained bruises, burns, fractures, repeated injuries, restraining marks, or delays in seeking medical care. We should always notice when an explanation does not match the injury, when another adult becomes visibly afraid around someone else. We all know that other adults can get bruised more easily and falls and fall also with more frequency. But medical conditions can um, cause different types of injuries in older adults. Therefore, our responsibility is to ask respectfully and document what we observe, not immediately accuse anyone. And speaking of sexual abuse, it includes any unwanted sexual contact or sexual activity with someone that cannot provide consent. Possible signs include unexplained injuries around intimate areas, torn or stained clothing, bleeding at times, or sexual transmitted infection without any clear explanation. These situations require a trauma-informed response. So it's very important that we avoid repeating questions to the older adult and connect this person with a trained professional so they can seek immediate care. Next slide, please. We have there neglect, abandonment, and self-neglect. So I would like also to mention that neglect, it's the failure to meet the older adult's basic needs, including food, water, safe shelter, clothing, hygiene, and essential medical care. Warning signs might include dehydration, significant weight loss, untreated injuries, preventable health problems, missed medications or medical appointments, poor hygiene, little food, unsafe living conditions. So neglect might be intentional, but it can also occur when a caregiver is overwhelmed, untrained, ill, or without adequate support. The caregiver might need help, but the older adult's safety still has to be addressed. Abandonment occurs when someone's responsible for care leaves another adult who needs assistance without arranging for their safety and continued care. This might include leaving another adult alone at home or live at the hospital or a public place that person cannot safely uh, care for themselves. And a self-neglect is very a little different because it does not necessarily involve another person's causing harm. Signs might include dangerous clutter, disconnected utilities, expired or missing food, untreated medical conditions, serious problems with hygiene, confusion about medications, or inability to perform essential daily tasks. We must be careful not to confuse self-neglect with personal autonomy. Older adults have the right to make choices that others might disagree with. The concern is whether the person understands the consequences and can meet essential needs without facing serious harm. Next slide, please. So bringing the different roles and perspectives, and speaking of housing, such as Casairis, as I was mentioning, which is the independent housing facility for older adults, different members of the community might notice different warnings. So all the warnings I'm talking here might be seen on a different perspective from different people. For example, the property management might notice that a resident who has paid rent on time for the longest time as possible suddenly begins missing payments. This is a warning sign. Maintenance staff might enter an apartment for a legitimate repair and observe that there is no food, that the living conditions have become unsafe, or that the resident appears to be without necessary support. A program staff might notice that someone has stopped attending activities, no longer communicate with them, or not in the same way that it used to be before. The neighbors might hear repeat yellings or notice that the older adult appears afraid. A family member or a friend might see unusual bank transaction and realize that someone else is controlling this older adult's mail, sometimes a telephone or identification or bank cards. So none of these individuals might have the entire picture, but the organizations communicate properly, document concerns, and protect confidentiality and maintain trust relationships with residents. The different pieces might reveal a pattern. This is also why social activities, shared meals, bilingual education, wellness check-ins, caregiving training, and regular contact are not simply additional services. They are protective connections. Next slide, please. So what do we do when identify warning signs? First, we need to create private opportunity to speak with the other adult. Do not ask sensitive questions in front of the person who might be causing the harm. We can begin with a simple observation like, I noticed that you have not been participating in activities lately. Is everything okay? Or you can also say, I noticed that you have been difficult paying for some of your usual expenses. Did something change? The purpose is not to interrogate, is to leave the door open, is to open this door for the communication. And second step, you need to listen with judgment, without any judgment. Do not dismiss the person's concerns. We also avoid immediately taking control or pressuring the other adult to make a decision. Never do that. And third, document objective information. Record what was observed and when it was observed, and the other adults onwards when possible. So the idea is to document everything that you have said with privacy, without pressuring and rushing the other adult, so you can observe the patterns there. Fourth, when appropriate, connect the person with assistance. So if it is, of course, in immediate danger, 911 or any local law enforcement. When the danger is not immediate, concern about abuse, neglect, or self-neglect, or exploitation can be reported to Adult Protective Services in the state where the other adult lives. The healthcare locator can help connect people with local resources. And I think we have a number there on the screen for everyone to take a note that if needed. And we need to remember to always respect the older adult's dignity and autonomy throughout the entire process. Our responsibility is not to automatically take control away. It's not to provide options or create transparency. Uh, we need to create that transparency in options, reduce all the risks that are imminent, and help the other adults regain safety and control. Next slide, please. Um, so for the prevention, and I'll be closing here, it requires more than telling other adults to be careful. Organizations must train staff to recognize warning signs, provide accessible and bilingual information, support caregivers before they become overwhelmed, and establish clear reporting and referral procedures. Families and friends can maintain regular contact, but pay attention to any changes in behaviors. And with someone authorized, help if you are authorized, help them review statements, confirm that essential bills are being paid, and most importantly, older adults need to know that abuse is never their fault. It's not what they're asking for. They're asking for help, not for abuse or a betrayal of their own family or a caregiver. If you remember a few things from today, remember this. Notice significant changes. Look for patterns rather than relying on one isolated sign. Create an opportunity for a private conversation. Document and report, and remain connected to the other adult. Through NHCOA's organizational work, including outreach, education, and caregiving training, advocacy, and our work at Casa Iris, we have learned that protecting older adults begins with dignity. It begins by listening to their voices, respecting their choices, supporting the people who care for them, and refusing to dismiss concerning changes as simply part of aging. When something does not feel right, we should ask respectfully, evaluate carefully, and act responsibly. Next slide. And thank you. Back to you, Christine.
Thank you, Pedro, for sharing this important information and also highlighting throughout the presentation that protection begins again with connection, listening to older adults, staying vigilant, knowing who to call, where to call, and taking other proactive steps to keep seniors safe. So, thank you. So, everyone, please be sure to hold on to any questions you have during today's discussion. and type them into the chat box. At the end of the panel session, we will have a question and answer session where we will have the time to review all the questions within the chat. So continuing with the other presentations, scams targeting older adults are an important concern, as fraud can have serious financial, emotional, and personal consequences. Such financial exploitation is a form of elder abuse, and understanding how scams work is an important part of protecting older adults' well-being and livelihood. So let's introduce our next speaker. She is Janice Gaines, the Senior Manager of Economics and Financial Security at the National Council on Aging, also known as NCOA. Today, Ms. Gaines will highlight NCOA's work on scam prevention and awareness. Welcome, Ms. Gaines.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. I'm Shanice Gaines. I'm the Senior Manager of Economic and Financial Security at NCOA. And of course, I'm here to talk about protecting older adults from financial scam and fraud. Next slide. So there are a few things I want you to learn today. First, why older adults are at risk of scams in the first place. And it isn't because anyone is naive. It's a combination of assets, life circumstances, and how these criminals operate. Second, I want you to walk away with the top scams right now, and the part that has changed everything in the last few years. And then third, I want you to know what NCOA is doing about it and where you can plug in. So let's start with the landscape. Next slide. We're going to talk about, fraud trends and common scams. And my goal here isn't to alarm anyone with individual horror stories, but it's to show how widespread and how sophisticated this has become. Because scale is what really surprises people the most. Next slide. So this is a national picture. It's straight from FBI's 2025 Internet Crime Complaint Center report. And it's the broadest view of cybercrime that we have in the US. Over 1 million complaints have been filed in 2025. And that's roughly one complaint every 30 seconds, all day, every day. Total losses topped $20.9 billion. And if you look, that's a 26% jump in a single year. Fraud isn't just persistent, it's accelerating. These operations are scaling and refining faster than public awareness is catching up. The average loss was about $20,700 overall. But hold on to that number because when it comes to older adults, it's nearly double. And we'll get into why in a moment. And I want you to also look into one important caveat. These are only the reported cases. The real total is significantly higher because plenty of people never report that they've been scammed, either from embarrassment or because they never realized they were scammed at all. So, this is the national picture. Now let's look into what this is doing when it comes to older Americans specifically. Next slide. So this is where the story gets even more alarming. Let's start with the population. The 65 and older population has grown 3.1% in a single year to roughly 63 million. This is driven by longer life expectancy, a declining birth rates, and the pool of potential targets grow every single year. In 2025, more than 201,000 adults aged 60 and up reported being victims of cyber financial scams, and the losses topped $7.75 billion. The average loss per older adult victim was over $38,000. And for many of these folks, this means, this is a meaningful piece of their retirement savings gone in one incident. Here's what I want to sit in for a second. A younger victim has decades decades of earning potential ahead for them to recover that money. For an older person, a single scam can unravel years of retirement savings and strip away their financial security. But more than that, it can shatter their confidence, undermine their independence, and leave lasting emotional scars, shame, anxiety, loss of trust, pulling away from family and friends. That damage lasts long after the money is gone. So, next slide. Why are seniors at risk? Let's start with the simplest reason. Over a lifetime, people tend to build up savings, home equity, and other assets. Scammers go where the money is, and they're highly motivated. They keep adapting because fraud pays. And now add worry. Go back to the next slide. And now add worry. Many older adults already carry, worry every single day. They worry about will the money last? Uh-oh, my slides are moving. Can you please go back to one more? Thank you. People are living longer, which is wonderful, but savings has to stretch further, and the costs of the basics keep climbing. We're all experiencing this. Housing costs are increasing, food, healthcare, caregiving, and that anxiety is exactly what scammer knows how to work with. Isolation is the next piece. Many older adults lose a spouse. They see their social circles shrinking daily, and or they simply have fewer conversations in a day. When there's no one around to say, "Hey, that sounds off to me," or "This is an unusual request. Maybe you should look into this a little further." Before they can even have those conversations, the money is gone. And then there's AI, which has changed the game fast. Scammers can clone a voice, write a flawless email, fake a photo, personalize the whole approach. Let go of the old picture of the obvious, badly written scam emails. Today's version is a polished, emotionally intelligent approach. And one more thing worth naming out loud is that the perpetrator isn't always a stranger. And as Pedro was talking about, it can be a family member, a caregiver, someone already trusted. Those cases are harder to spot and much harder to report. So this work isn't about stopping crime. It's about protecting retirement security, independence, and what people spend a lifetime building. Next slide. So let's talk about the top scams impacting older adults. This is what we at NCOA call the Dirty Dozen. This is the top 12 scams targeting older adults. And we know there are way more scams than 12, but these are just the top ones that we highlight. And I won't walk through all 12 here, but I want to spend a minute on 4 that come up the most. And also include how AI is making each one of them harder to spot. Call center and tech support scams. They're still some of the costliest scams. A call may come in, a pop-up appears. Uh-oh, can you go back to the previous slide, please? A call comes in or a pop-up appears saying something's wrong with your device or your account. And the person sounds completely legitimate, right? And so they pose as tech support, a bank employee, a government official, and they're, after your login details. AI comes to play because chatbots can handle these things. At first the contact is at an enormous scale, and now they can be fluent in English and Spanish. The voice tools that come with AI, they let one person sound like an entire call center, right down to the office noise in the background. It sounds really legitimate. Next, we have romance and confidence scams. They go after your emotional needs. The scammer spends weeks or months building a relationship, and it feels real. And it feels real before they even ever ask for money. 1 in 10 adults over 50 experience romance scams. AI is what lets it scale. They have generated profile photos that a reverse image search will never trace. Chat box, they keep dozens of conversations warm all at once. And the video calls with a face that isn't real. Government and bank impersonation scams, they run on fear and urgency. They claim to be Social Security, the IRS or your bank. They push you to act before you can think. They've even posed as your grandchild in trouble with their spoof caller ID. This is where AI hits the hardest. A few seconds of audio from a social media post is enough to clone a loved one's voice, and they have deepfake videos and forged documents that make this nearly impossible to catch in the moment. And lastly, you have investment scams, and they carry the biggest dollar losses. They start with trust, and only later does the opportunity appear. Advanced fee schemes, Ponzi and pyramid structures, market manipulation, real estate, crypto. AI shows up as a slick, fake trading dashboards, deep fake endorsements from celebrities or advisors, chatbots answering questions about returns around the clock. So the whole thing feels very professionally run. So, how do you even spot a scam before the money moves? Next slide. Red flags include urgency and scare tactics. Act now or you'll lose all access to this special offer. Your account will be closed today. They manufacture panic and taxes that you'll get arrested, an emergency with a loved one. All these things to stop you from thinking clearly. Real institutions, they don't, real institutions do take urgent matters seriously, but they don't pressure you into snap decisions to make by surprise text. You need to pause, stop, and think. Don't click. Verify what number has called you. Another red flag, unusual payment demands. No legitimate business or agency will make you pay by wire transfer, crypto, gift cards, or ways that are untraceable. That's a giant warning sign. And often, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And impossible investment returns, a prize you never entered, those don't make sense. Those are red flags. Demand for secrecy. If they say, don't tell anyone, or you'll get in trouble if you mention this, that is a red flag. Secrecy is a classic form of isolation, keeping you away from the exact people who would talk you out of it. If someone asks you to keep banking activity secret, stop and verify. As caregivers, trusted community support, or family, we need to be aware of warning signs. Someone may be getting scammed. So watch for unusual account activity, new names being added to accounts, sudden gift card purchases, a shift in mood or behavior. That could be confusion, fear, or withdrawal. That could also be a sudden sign of euphoria and excitement, even from like an intoxicating new relationship or money that's coming their way. Watch for caregivers who won't let you have access to the older adult anymore. Watch for piles of mail from sweepstakes and free gifts. And one last thought on how you can raise concern. You don't want to you want to ask. You don't want to tell the older adult about what they're doing, right? And an example of a good approach may be, scammers are getting so sophisticated. If something feels off, let's check this out together. Make it a shared threat, since every generation is being targeted. It's not just older adults. And if someone has already lost money, treat it as the crime that it is and support them through the situation. Don't shame them, because shame is a big reason why people hide losses, and hiding is what gets the losses to grow. So prevention is bigger than any one organization, which brings me to what NCOA is doing in this space. Next slide. Our work runs across four fronts: community workshops, education on scams themselves, partnerships, and research and advocacy. So let me walk you through each one. Next slide. First, workshops in the community. Peer learning is what makes these work. Older adults learn best hearing real stories and strategies from people their own age, and in those conversations, they just stick in a way a handout never will. Our Savvy Saving Seniors Toolkit is free. It's ready to use and it is also available in English and Spanish. It walks groups through the common tactics, how to verify a request before acting on it, and how to watch accounts for suspicious activities. The curriculum includes that dirty dozens of scams that I just went over, as well as the red flags and warning signs we discussed. You'll get a facilitator's guide, a participant handbook, and a customizable slide deck. And notice the framing of these workshops. It isn't about fear, it's about giving people the tools and confidence to use them. The other benefit is one that we did not design this for originally, but these workshops reduce isolation. They give people a room to connect in and compare notes, and that itself is protective. One suggestion as you think about your own programming, this curriculum pairs beautifully with any technology or digital literacy workshop that you already run. The two go hand in hand as everything moves more online. Next slide. Scam prevention is a community effort, and we can't be everywhere every time. So at NCOA, we build relationships with reputable financial institutions, tech companies, foundations, and community-based organizations that can speak to what's happening right now in real time. We've also supported the work of partners that may already have strong curricula on scams, fraud, and digital literacy or cybersecurity, where our role is just connecting them to the networks that reach older adults. Our networks include benefit enrollment centers, senior centers, and other community organizations focused on communities where the risk is highest. Next slide. We also host virtual trainings through our learning platform aimed at all of you rather than the older adults directly. We actually have one coming up on September 23rd. The goal is to meet caregivers, professionals, and families where they already are. We build awareness on how scams and financial exploitation actually affect older adults. We cover the most common types of scams and we walk through how to report them. We also spend real time on the conversation itself. How do you bring this up with an older adult without shame or blame? How do you create space where someone feels safe admitting that something has happened? And everything comes with resources that you can use the next day. Nothing here requires you to build a program from scratch, and it's all free. Next slide. The third piece is the longer game: research, public education, and advocacy. On research, we're working to quantify something that's been mostly anecdotal. The true cost of scams on savings, retirement readiness, and economic stability, plus the emerging risks facing older adults and other vulnerable populations. On public education, we're producing articles, social media posts, and animations to get practical guidance in front of older adults directly. And on advocacy, we're working to raise the political salience of scam prevention, making the case to candidates, policymakers, and the public for stronger consumer protection. All of it ties back to our mission at NCOA, creating the conditions for all of us to age well in a society where each of us lives with dignity, purpose, and security. Next slide. So let me leave you with one ask. Pick one thing from today and act on it this month, whether it's run a workshop with the free toolkit, add scam prevention to a program that you already offer, or just have the conversation with 1 to 2 people that you may be worried about. Protecting older adults from fraud starts with people like you noticing, asking, and speaking up. Thank you so much for allowing me to present today. My contact information is on the slide if you have any questions or you need any of the resources that I mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shanice, for sharing this valuable information with all of us and also including all these helpful resources for learning more about scam prevention. So, once again, please feel free to write your questions in the chat box until our question and answer session at the end of today's webinar. To close our panel discussion, we will highlight the resources available through ACL to support the prevention of elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation, as well as how we can help those impacted. It is important to highlight that protecting older adults from abuse and neglect requires awareness, education, and access to the right resources and support. So let's welcome Eden Ruiz Lopez, the Aging Services Program Specialist at the Office of Elder Justice and Adult Protective Services at the Administration for Community Living, or also known as ACL, who will also be sharing ACL programs and current resources for elder abuse. Welcome, Ms. Eden.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the introduction. I am grateful on behalf of the Administration for Community Living to be able to join you today and tell you more about us and what drives our elder justice priorities. Next slide, please. As we've already heard, elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation are affecting millions of older adults and people with disabilities every year. And these harms take a toll not only on physical health, but also on emotional well being, financial security, and community stability. As the federal home for elder justice and adult protective services, ACL is committed to advancing dignity, safety, rights, and autonomy for both older adults and people with disabilities. And today, I'd like to share an overview of our work, the resources ACL provides, and how organizations like our host and other partners on the call today can help with strengthening prevention and response efforts and ensuring that older adults can live safely with their rights upheld and their protections firmly in place. ACL was created on the foundational belief that all people, regardless of age or disability, should be able to live independently and fully participate in their own communities. We bring together programs for not only older adults and people with disabilities, but also for caregivers, legal assistance providers, and protective service systems. And this structure enables ACL to protect rights and prevent abuse by coordinating across systems and also reinforcing the safeguards that older adults depend on to live healthy and productive lives. So, by coordinating aging and disability programs within one federal agency, ACL strengthens collaboration, resource sharing, and the ability to deliver services that support independence and uphold rights. Within ACL, the Office of Elder Justice and Adult Protective Services program, where I operate, leads federal efforts to prevent, identify, and respond to adult maltreatment. So, in terms of our work, it includes supporting state adult protective service programs through training, technical assistance, data modernization, and cross system collaboration. We advance national elder justice priorities and strengthen the evidence base through research and evaluation. We are sought after for improving understanding of maltreatment trends through national data collection. And we work on coordinating federal partnerships to strengthen prevention, emergency response, and multidisciplinary approaches to abuse. And finally, OEJ APS also manages key innovation and capacity building efforts that I'll tell you a little bit more about later on in my presentation that help APS and allied systems evolve and adapt, especially as we've learned from prior presenters here today that new forms of exploitation are constantly emerging. Next slide. So ACL's elder justice work is guided by two major federal statutes. The Elder Justice Act created a federal foundation for advancing elder justice. And of course, the Older Americans Act supports critical services that protect rights and promote safety for older adults. And together, these laws allow ACL to, for instance, strengthen APS systems nationwide, support prevention strategies, public education, and consumer awareness, ensure civil rights protections that are centered in service delivery, and promote dignity, autonomy, and safety, which has been a repeat concept of mine that I want to continue to reinforce. Those are core values in creating community supports. Next slide. So, our Protecting Rights and Preventing Abuse initiative emphasizes both prevention and response. And what we hope to accomplish with that is ensuring that older adults have access to trusted systems when harm does occur. And also empowering not only the older adults, but their communities to intervene and promote awareness earlier. ACL invests in a broad elder justice portfolio designed to improve the way systems serve older adults experiencing maltreatment, and we do that through a number of ways. So, for example, elder justice innovation grants are something that we've been funding since, I believe, 2016, and they support states, tribes, and communities in testing new approaches to improve APS outcomes, expand multidisciplinary partnerships, and strengthen data and evaluate, of course, emerging practices. Another big bucket and area of focus in OEJ APS is APS technical assistance and training. And this provides national support for the APS or Adult Protective Service workforce, administrators, supervisors, and frontline workers. And finally, a big area of focus is national research data and reporting systems. And what we hope that these are doing are building consistent definitions, improving national data accuracy, and strengthening the understanding of maltreatment trends. Next slide. So recapping some of the prior presenters' resources, you're going to obviously see some overlap, but I also want to point you in the direction of our elderjustice.acl.gov website if you're not familiar with it. So we have on these the suite of websites that are tailored for different target audiences. There's a variety of consumer education and materials on recognizing and reporting abuse. There's information tailored to families, caregivers, community providers, and professionals. There are federal guidance points and updates on APS modernization, elder justice priorities, and national initiatives. And these tools are all meant to empower communities, support professionals, and help older adults understand when and where to seek help. As we're all aware, elder abuse is fundamentally a justice issue, and at its core, it threatens a person's autonomy, their well-being, their identity, and connection to and a sense of their community. So preventing and addressing abuse is essential for ensuring older adults can age with dignity, independence, and safety. And by strengthening systems like APS, building multidisciplinary collaboration, improving awareness, and expanding prevention strategies, we honor the values of safety and respect. And those are values that are deeply shared by our host and all of these presenters that you're hearing from. And as a reminder, just to reinforce where to turn to for support, if you fear that someone's life is in imminent danger, don't hesitate to contact 911. Also, for example, to uncover reporting resources on our suite of ACL resource sites, you could turn to, for example, the National Center on Elder Abuse. And we want to encourage you all to build your own knowledge and share with your network as well. I want to thank the National Hispanic Council on Aging again. The community-based work that you're leading plays a vital role in ensuring that prevention, accountability, and support reach every older adult and adults with disabilities who need them. And ACL and OEJ APS, want you all to know, remain committed to supporting your work, learning from your expertise, and strengthening collaboration across systems. And I truly believe that together we can build a stronger, safer future for older adults, people with disabilities, and their families. So thank you again. That's all from me.
Thank you, Ms. Ruiz, for sharing ACL resources and programs that are important to help us be informed and also aware about the resources that are available to prevent elder abuse and neglect. And as we close the panel session, I want to thank each of our speakers for making today's webinar an informed discussion. And now that we have had our final speaker, we will move on to the question and answer session. So we have a couple of questions that I will like to do. And one of them is the following. So if all the panelists can join again, that would be great. And here's a question. It's about how can we make sure older adults know where to go for help and that they feel comfortable asking for support? Go ahead, Aiden.
Thank you. So I would just say to this, I think that all the presenters today were reinforcing resources, and these resources really are designed to help a variety of different target audiences. Don't be afraid or intimidated. You could connect with the elder care locator, like how Pedro had highlighted. There's also local areas on aging, our area agencies on aging, community centers, senior centers. They are all there to support you get in contact with people and services that could assist you.
Thank you, Aiden. Anyone else? I can also highlight, I know that it was mentioned throughout the presentation about trust, and that's very important for everyone because, again, older adults need to feel safe, comfortable, asking for support without being judged, and also feel like respected. So I think that is key when trying to manage any form of older adults being abused or neglected or
Yeah,
affected by scam.
yeah, I agree, Christine, and I wanted to echo that by saying, as it was mentioned by me, and then Shansi also mentioned that we need to look for the signs, and and if we see something, we need to carefully pay attention to the signs and make a pattern, not just by one sign or by one comment, take uh, any decisions or preconceptions, but need to look and watch for the patterns and try to help give dignity for the older adults, because that's the idea. If we're trying to assist and help them, we're trying to give them more dignity as well.
And I
Thank
think
you.
the biggest thing to keep in mind, or the biggest way to protect yourself and loved ones, um, is that have these conversations ahead of time, right? Like start having conversations about what these things look like now, as a preventive measure versus having it after they've been scammed or after you've found out about it. Practice scenarios with them. If someone approaches you with this, does that make sense? Like, what do we do? What are ways that you can protect yourself from being scammed? And so they'll keep those things in mind. As we've been doing these workshops across the nation, we've realized that one conversation about scams, abuse, exploitation is not enough, right? They need to constantly, these scams, these tactics are constantly changing. Continuously having these conversations, very important, and that's the key to prevention. And I know that like we're hearing about scams more and more. That could be a good thing, right? That means that people are talking about it. People are becoming less embarrassed and just ready to spread the word and tell other people and teach one another. And so they're learning from other people's experiences, which is really helping people to protect themselves as well.
Absolutely. I agree on that, Shanice. Thank you. And also, we received a question from the audience, which is interesting because we always talk about speaking up, say something, right? But then that's a question that it's how are people protected when they speak up on behalf of that? For example, elder abuse that it's happening in their family and they might need to be protected, right? Any concern, anything you want to add that? How those people that speak up are protected on that end?
Well, I can go first. In our perspective of housing, for example, first giving privacy to them, like I was mentioning in my presentation, privacy is a key. So if someone speak up, you need to, before taking any actions, you need to investigate and with very um giving a lot of privacy to the person who is speaking up, to the older adult that is being involved. That's one. And I think you know, I, we have Eden was mentioning about the protective services that the government offer on in ACL, and they have ways. I think she can probably talk a little bit more about that, but to protect and to connect those people speaking up with services and legal assistance. So that could be a way to give more privacy for them.
Yeah, I can jump in on this too,
Mhm.
Pedro. Thank you for deferring to me. So I would just connect or encourage that an older adult connect with social workers for additional supports and connections to resources. I mean, social workers within social service programs wear so many hats, and they have the ability to make a connection to the courts or to a legal service provider that can, in certain instances, assist with securing a protection order or some other legal instrument that could help with safeguarding an older adult and potentially relocation assistance, getting them into an elder shelter. So it just really depends on the scenario. The most important thing first is speaking up, making sure that your voice is heard, and that you're actively requesting for yourself. You're your own best self advocate. That you're actively requesting the services and supports that you need.
Perfect. Thank you, Eden. So now I have an ending question for all of you, and it is: what is one important thing you would want every older adult, caregiving, and family member to know about preventing abuse, neglect, and exploitation?
I can go. Talk about it. You know, scream it off the rooftops. When you hear about a scam that has happened to your neighbor, or or something is suspicious on your Facebook account, talk about it. Share with someone. We know that isolation is a big indicator of if an older adult is likely to be scammed, right? So we want to encourage older adults to be around people, whether it's family. A lot of times, senior centers are their extended family. Build those relationships with the older adults that you're around so that you can be that trusted connection for them and have the conversations. Oh, I met someone online. Okay, well, what do you know about them? But also slide in some, information about, well, make sure that, they're legitimate, or don't give out too much information, to help them protect themselves. Bring scams and their financial vulnerabilities, like bring it to the forefront and don't be scared to have conversations before it happens.
Yeah. To complement that, I want to add that everybody should speak up and seek for help. Sometimes, former, like I was mentioning, abuse happens in many different ways, and one of the ways is by people being overwhelmed, and then they begin, self-neglecting themselves or neglecting another adult by being overwhelmed. So seek for help. If you need a family member to jump in, if you need another caregiver to jump in, or other friends that can, being involved in the process, please do. And another adult, the same thing. Be sure that you are not abuse is not what you're asking for. If you're asking for help and you're getting abused, you need to seek for additional help for that to be stopped. So you are not the problem. Being in need of help, it's not a problem. Everybody will go through this process. So be sure that there are a lot of people that are willing to help, willing to support and provide uh, inf- not in just information, but provide support in a way that it's deserved with dignity for you.
Thank you, Pedro. And thank you, Shanice. And thank you, Eden, as well. As we finish the question and answer session, we would like to thank all of our attendees and experts for joining today's virtual event. So also we would like to invite Robert Bob Blancato. He's the member of NHCOA's Board of Directors, and he will be providing closing remarks. Welcome, Mr. Blancato.
Thank you, Christine, and good afternoon, everyone. And I'm, as a board member of NHCOA and also the Elder Justice Coalition's National Coordinator, I'm really happy to be here to participate in this important webinar. I commend Dr. Yanira Cruz and, of course, Christine for holding this and organizing this important webinar. And for those who don't know us, the Elder Justice Coalition is the national voice in Washington promoting elder justice through prevention of elder abuse. So, a lot of things have been talked about. I want to commend Pedro and Shanice and Aiden for their important contributions today to the conversation. But I wanted to think about two things that I want you to keep in mind. One is a victim of elder abuse is never the same after being victimized. And number two, you can't stop what you don't report. Okay? These are two fundamental issues that we have to keep in our mind. The Senate Aging Committee, for example, reported for every case of reported elder abuse, there are 5 times as many cases that go unreported. A study that was done by the University of Southern California noted that in Los Angeles area, more than 40% of Latino elders told Spanish-speaking interviewers they'd been abused or neglected in the past year, but only 1.5% said they had ever reported the abuse to authorities. Again, you cannot stop what you don't report. And of course, NHCOA is concerned about this, is doing its part to connect its members to appropriate resources, such as Adult Protective Services, the Aging Network, Long-Term Care Ombudsman for those older adults in facilities. Next slide. So, we've talked about factors and conditions and types of elder abuse. The studies do show consistently that risk factors include low income, low education, living with others, isolation, and limited use of formal services. And, one same study pointed out that these characteristics are prominent among Latino immigrants that may suggest that they may be a group that is particularly vulnerable. And then we have familism, which emphasizes the needs of the family over needs of any one individual, which, quote, may conceal mistreatment and inhibit formal help seeking. Okay? We should keep these in mind as we talk about what can we do in the area of elder abuse prevention. Next slide. So, we've heard numbers and data. Let me throw a few more out that are important to process on. The data is staggering and startling at this point. 1 in 10 older adults 70 and above have experienced elder abuse in the past year. As was talked about by Shanice, older adults lose $4.8 billion to fraud, scams, and financial exploitation, a 4-fold increase since 2020. And as been talked about, look at the kinds that represent the top 5 according to the Federal Trade Commission. Investment scams. This second one in particular, and again, things that we just want to make sure we bring home to people. The federal government never calls you, okay? Just get that clear. You know, if it's somebody claiming to be the government, hang up the phone. If there's something flashes across your screen that says government, hang up the phone. Okay. Romance scams, tech support scams. And of course, you know, one of the old fashioned ones that's still out there are prize sweepstakes and lottery scams. Next slide. So we want to talk about what's going on in Washington about this. And in my judgment, it's happening way too slowly. Okay. There are three priorities for action in this calendar year of 2026. Number one, we need more funding for adult protective services and the long-term care ombudsman program. They are all, and they're both way underfunded. Our coalition is calling for $100 million for funding for adult protective services and $70 million for the ombudsman program. We also want to see a funding increase for the social services block grant, which is the main source of funding for adult protective services. And we want to see $52 million for the Elder Justice Act for training and services, including the work that Eden does at ACL. We want to see the Older Americans Act renewed. And this is something I know NHCOA and we work on together a lot. The Senate has done its job. The Senate passed a bipartisan 4-year renewal of the Older Americans Act. It is time for the House to act, because the Older Americans Act provides the authority for adult protective services and the ombudsman program, including their very important resource centers. The National Family Caregiver Support Program is also under the Older Americans Act. Very important programs that need to get extended beyond this year. And then finally, we have to renew the Elder Justice Act that was referred to before, that was passed for the first time in 2020, the law that provides dedicated funding for adult protective services and enhanced training for ombudsmen. And there's a pending bill in Congress that would provide these provisions, as well as increased staffing in nursing homes, which you know is a big problem, and also to provide a new grant program for area agencies and community groups to help combat isolation and loneliness, which we know is also a contributing factor to elder abuse. So on the next slide, which I'd like to hold up for a second, assuming people can do this and go to the QR codes, and Christine will make these slides available to participants. We just want each of you, take your choice or take all 4 of them. Call for the reauthorization of the Older Americans Act. Call for your House member to co-sponsor the Elder Justice Reauthorization Act of 2026. Support increased funding for the long-term care ombudsman program, or support increased funding for adult protective services. Each one of these needs to get done this year. And I would say probably in terms of timing, the last 2 are probably as important as any, because we're about to hit the start of the new fiscal year in October. And we want to see these funds take effect this coming fiscal year so we can do more in our role to prevent elder abuse in this country. So I'll give just 5 more seconds on this. Actually, I'll leave this up, Christine. I'll just verbally read my last slide, and then we can have people use this QR code. So my guess is that if you're on this webinar, it tells me one important thing. You care about elder abuse prevention. You want to see more done in Washington, D.C. to combat elder abuse. You know, advocates at all levels need to go to work at the state, local, and national level, because elder abuse is in fact a state and local issue as much as it is a national issue. If you're an advocate, and we assume you are if you're on this webinar, you need to be the voice for the older adult who needs a voice to protect them from abuse. Be a good neighbor. Be a good friend of an older person who might be living alone, because the average age of a victim of elder abuse is an older woman living alone between the ages of 75 and 80. You may know these kind of people. I hope you'll take the time and effort to stay close to them and keep them feel like they have friends in the world. Become a member of a local elder abuse prevention group. Check in your own area. They have them all across the country. They're very important, because every little bit helps. And so thank you for attending this webinar and anything you can do in your work as advocates. So thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Bob, for joining us and sharing your expertise with us. And before closing this event, we invite you to join a growing movement of individuals dedicated to improving the lives of older adults, their families, and caregivers through our individual membership program. For just $25 a year, members gain access to exclusive resources, educational workshops, advocacy tools, and bilingual information on health and aging, all while directly supporting NHCOA's mission. To learn more or become a member today, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen. So today's webinar recording will be available on our YouTube channel. And we encourage you all to follow us on NHCOA social media. You can find us in X, Facebook, and Instagram by using @NHCOA for more information and news of upcoming events. Again, thank you, and until the next one. Bye-bye.